So with that being said, one to dive into, as always, the Roofing Success Series, why I built it. And the real thing I'm trying to do here with this series is I noticed an overwhelming trend in the roofing industry. I've been doing marketing and sales for the past 6 years now, which is very odd to say, but every roofing company that I speak to thinks they need more leads, etc., and that will solve all their problems. And a majority of the time, that's not the case. But I've noticed a lot of marketing agencies are just happy to push that down your throat. So my goal with this series is to provide roofing companies with the resources that they actually need in order to have success, and that comes in the form of with our previous series, we've done sales trainings, tax strategies, operations, and management. Today, we're going to be taking a step back and going a little bit higher level and looking at what's going on at the macro level in the roofing industry and how that could potentially affect you as you go on operating your business. Because the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, when you're running a business, having run one for 6 years, is kind of stick your head in the sand and try to ignore things that are happening. It's typically a recipe for disaster. So, with that being said, before we get started, I want to go over some housekeeping rules. I know we all have a lot going on in our day to day between taking care of our team, fielding our customer calls, dealing with all the little fires that occur as a business owner. But today, I want to challenge you guys to do something a little bit different because I take the time to carefully vet each of our speakers to make sure you have the most value packed hour of your entire week when you join us here. And so, what I'm going to challenge you to do is take that phone. I'm going to do the same thing right here. I have a couch right behind my laptop, so it's not going to explode on the floor, hopefully. There you go. Throw your phone away, put it in the drawer, close out all your windows, and take out a notepad and just get prepared to take notes. This will be an open format kind of Q&A. I have some questions prepared for Bryan, but if you guys have questions, if you have input too, I know there's some other people in PE here on the business brokerage side, actual PE firms. If you want to chime in too, I think me and Bryan are more than open to that and opening up that discussion. So, with that being said, just get ready to learn something new. Today's guest is a bit different, right? Typically, we bring on people who are very micro level, have a skill set in one specific area in your business, sales, operations, etc. We're going to take a step back today from the day-to-day sales, operations, lead gen, etc., and zoom out and look at the high-level forces that are really shaping the roofing industry right now. And this is going to affect everybody in the roofing industry, whether you're a supplier or even a laborer, right? This is going to be affecting you, in my opinion. Bryan may have different opinions and he's more of an expert on that. But we're also going to be, again, switching up that format slightly. So instead of it being a typical presentation, I have some questions prepared. But if you have questions as we go along, things that are bugging you, questions you have about private equity and the way that it is affecting your business, feel free to chime in. And if we can answer them, we most definitely will. So was that long enough for me to ramble, Bryan, before I introduce you?
I could listen to you all day long.
There we go. I'll keep talking then. I drank the tea so I could have my radio voice ready. Um, but with that being said, I'm excited to introduce today's speaker, Bryan Gottlieb with Roofing Contractor Magazine. So, been talking about this for a while, Bryan. I think we've been chatting since what, back in January about having you on.
Something like that. I think you're right.
6 months later, I got you here. Super honored to have you here. So thank you for coming. Before I let you kind of take it away, intro yourself, just wanted to say Bryan's been covering the roofing space with a sharp eye for quite a while now and has been reporting on some of the biggest trends shaping our industry. And that's actually how I found him was reading through some roofing contractor magazine articles that really resonated with me. And so I reached out. But he's been covering everything from hostile takeovers in the supply chain, the rapid rise of private equity backed consolidations among roofing contractors, and many other topics. Um, but he's talked to founders, analysts, and insiders across the country and has a rare gift, in my opinion, for turning complex industry shifts into actionable insights for contractors like you. So if you guys stick around today, I think you're going to have a good time and you're going to have some really good takeaways from it. With that being said, Bryan, I'll let you kind of intro yourself real quick and then we can dive into the Q&A if we're ready.
Well, thanks, George. I appreciate the kind words, and I want to let the contractors who are in the audience know that uh, I think the roofing industry is unique among the trades. I've uh, I've never quite experienced an industry that as fragmented and large as it is nationwide, there's a brotherhood that I find really endearing. And there's a passion there that I think should fill each of you with pride. Having said that, I've been covering roofing now for about 2.5 years. And within those 2.5 years, I've really been uh, pretty shocked at how quickly things have moved and are changing. I started at Roofing Contractor in the beginning of 2023. And last night I was just doing a little poking around. I think before 2023, maybe there were one or two articles on Roofing Contractor about private equity or portfolio platform firms. So I came in just as this nascent roll-up started. And it's been pretty amazing to watch. And without knowing exactly what it'll look like 10 or 15 years down the road, I think that it's a net gain overall. I think that it's bringing a level of uniformity and professionalism to a trade that for a long time was a little more ad hoc than some of the more technical trades like HVAC or electric, plumbing, so on and so forth. So, how was that, George?
Yeah, I mean, I think that led right into my first question, kind of. So,
Yeah.
yeah. With that being said, I know you just spoke about kind of joining the roofing industry about 2 years ago, and you've been tracking, it seems, based on the articles that I read before reaching out to you, private equities moves into the roofing space over the past 2.5 years now. Obviously, like you just said when you started, it was maybe two, three articles. It didn't seem to be that big of a thing in the roofing industry yet. When was it during your 2-year tenure that you started to realize that kind of this is going to be a big deal, right? These firms are entering and it's gonna have a major shift on the way that this industry operates.
It's a good question. Maybe 3 to 6 months in,
Yeah.
I there were a handful of portfolios that were created, not necessarily by taking one firm and then making that into a platform, but outside groups coming in with the intent of building a portfolio. And like it's the pace quickened where every 2 or 3 days, uh, we'd see something on the wires about one firm being acquired by another. And then, you started to see some of the larger platforms start to coalesce within that first, 12 to 18 months. But, it's ongoing. It- so.
Yeah. And so you initially just saw it as kind of some disparate firms kind of coming in, doing some small acquisitions, not massive roll-ups, but now you're seeing kind of in the first year to year and a half, you start to notice these larger firms are entering, starting to suck up a lot of the market or roll it up.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you consider a lot of the market. The roofing market, it's huge, and I think there's somewhere around 85,000 roofing contractors in America, and to the best of my knowledge, I think maybe uh, I've heard estimates as low as 2% and as high as 7% uh, of the industry has been consolidated. So, we're to borrow a hackneyed baseball analogy, we're maybe the bottom of the first, maybe top of the second. It's super nascent. We're we're looking at consolidations for at least the better part of a decade, and that's in the first tier. And what I mean by that is where George's roofing company uh, decides to partner with a middle market private equity firm. They inject liquidity, and then George goes out and he purchases firms in other markets or specializing in other fields, and then like a puzzle puts it together that way versus uh, a larger platform that has between 10 to 15 brands that would then be repackaged and sold to a larger venture capital firm.
And do you see those firms that are currently operating with those middle market companies right now eventually selling as a roll up to those larger private equity firms, or what does that
Yeah,
look like?
like to the best of my knowledge, I don't think I've seen that yet, where it goes from tier A to tier B. But some of the early entrants are large enough now. They have the scale that uh, I think if macroeconomic conditions were different, you might start seeing some selling. For example,
Yeah.
looking at the commercial space, Tecta, uh, the end of last year, um, Tecta's owners had put out feelers that they were considering selling, and that never happened. And frankly, day to day, who I was just on the phone with a colleague of mine who covers government. He was going through the current budget that the Senate's working on right now, and who knows? Um, but so I think macroeconomics are suppressing uh, that second tier transition, but there's a lot of liquidity out there. There's still a lot of action taking place uh, at the tier A level.
So just to clarify, when you're saying macroeconomics, you're saying, hey, the economy is a bit slower right now, and that's delaying some of these actions that may have otherwise been taken to further consolidate the industry. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand?
Well, so, from the best of my understanding, yes. And it's not necessarily that the economy is slowed because we don't really know yet, but there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly within the bond market, which affects borrowing rates. So I think that second jump that's being suppressed.
That makes sense. And you had said we're kind of at the bottom of the first inning right now, right?
Mhm.
And I think you also said between 5 to 7% of the industry is consolidated right now, which is a couple $1 billion already over the
Right.
past 2 years. So that being kind of the bottom of the first, my question that popped to mind is like, what does that look like in the ninth inning of this for roofing companies at a macro level, but then also at a lower level for these companies that are that mid-market size?
I don't know. It probably looks a lot like what HVAC or electric or plumbing looks like today. Car washes, a lot of these service firms that have since consolidated, many of which you very well may not know, because one of the key strategies of these consolidations is to leverage the value of the brand. So, I'm in Detroit, for example, and there's a Detroit-based roofing firm that has since become a platform and has expanded into Ohio and Illinois, New York State. If I wasn't covering this, I would have no idea that, and I'm purposely not naming any firms, but, the owner of John's Roofing in Schenectady, New York, very well could be some guy out in Los Angeles. But because John's Roofing in Schenectady has been around since the 1930s, that brand is why it was acquired in the first place.
So they're leveraging that brand instead of rolling it up underneath one umbrella brand.
Correct.
So it's kind of hard to tell, and that's interesting. So with like HVAC, I know there's some definitely some brands within there. that have kind of like they're all rolled underneath one brand. But
Mhm.
um, what did that look like with them? I'm not familiar with like them rolling up companies and then not being publicized, right? They kept the current brand, and so do you mind going a bit deeper into what that actually looks like? Because I'm actually curious there. And while you're doing that, it looks like there's a question in the chat. I'm gonna pop that open.
Sure. Yeah, I could only speak about it to the extent that I'm aware, but going through a rebrand is very expensive, and it's those things that it requires that already exists. So if particularly within where we are in roofing right now, where you're still less than 10% consolidated, there are very few roofing companies that have enough renown that they could go into a new market and rebrand without either alienating customers or having to spend a lot of time and resource to reestablish themselves when they've gone into a new market and purchased a firm that's already been established. To look at a parallel, we can go to the supply industry. You had, there were three, we call them the big three. There's, ABC, there was Beacon, which was recently acquired by QXO, and then there's SRS that was acquired the end of 2024 by the Home Depot. Beacon and SRS had virtually operating models in terms of their branding. Like Beacon would come in and purchase, George's, hardware store on a Friday. Monday morning, it'd be opened up as Beacon. SRS intentionally maintained the distinction of each brand that it purchased because it saw the value in the familiarity that exists within local markets. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so as far as like consolidation from an HVAC standpoint, there's going to be companies that are look local, still are local, and continue to operate that way.
Correct.
We do have a few questions from the audience now that I want to get to too, because
Sure.
they seem to be coming in. So I got one from anonymous attendee, which if you guys want to ask it live, feel free to be my guest. Just let me know when you're asking those questions. I don't know if you're able to do this, Brian, but that was actually one question I was curious about too, which are like, who are the big players in the industry and some firms that have done this process well, in your opinion? And if you're not able to say that, that's completely fine. I know that wasn't something we chatted about before.
In roofing,
Yeah.
I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant anyone in particular because, well, you know what? Here, uh, There's one of the early entrants to the consolidation space is a company called Omnia Exterior Solutions that really has, in my opinion, has set a best practice for how to build a platform portfolio. It was started with intent, and its chief executive, one of the smartest guys I've ever met, and also one of the nicest, and one of the most unflappable and deliberate people that I've had the opportunity and pleasure to know. I I, I want to have 12 or 13 brands now. Going from Maine out to the Rockies, and that would be an example of when it works well, when it's run right. That's what it looks like. But yeah, I having said that, if anyone at Omni is listening, I hope it's okay that I mentioned your name.
Well, well, forgiveness if not. But okay, cool. I also have a comment here from Will. This is the guy I was talking to about before Brian. I think he has a business brokerage. Said it's kind of rare to rebrand a home service business. A lot of what they're buying is a local brand awareness, reputation in the market. That brand. Okay, so that kind of aligns with what you were saying there. Got another question in the chat right now. I think I'm going to say this one till the end, guys, because I think it might be a little bit longer one. I think we can also have some collaboration here. In answering this, so with that being said, though, one thing we had discussed a bit in our initial discussions before this meeting was you had mentioned the Pac-Man model, right?
Mhm.
And I'm always interested in diving deeper into exactly what things are. I'm an engineer, so I like to know why the bridge doesn't fall down, which is sometimes a detriment, sometimes a benefit. But can you unpack that analogy for the audience and kind of what that means in real terms for those two $10 million roofing business owners?
Well, sure. The Pac-Man model is essentially what we were talking about previously with I was just using tier A and tier B. So right now, you know, even the largest platforms, those that have between 10 and 15 brands, by and large are, at tier A. And so what will happen is that platform will then be sold to a larger investment firm who will then either buy out the principals or the principals will stay on. And then either further expand out, build it out, to a larger scale or not. Like again, we'll go back to Tecta because it's arguably the largest commercial roofing company in America. So, Tecta had already been Pac-Man, and it was looking for, I don't know, like if there's like an even larger Pac-Man, but there must be because they were looking at they were considering putting it on the market.
I think
So
there's always a bigger fish, right? And so that tier A, tier B, tier initial round of acquisitions that we're seeing right now, and then tier B is when
correct,
it's rolled up into a larger firm.
correct.
Okay, understood. I was not quite familiar with those terms there. Appreciate all the questions today, guys. It's very interactive. If you guys want to unmute, by the way, when you ask your question, just say that when you ask it, and I'll unmute you. There's two additional questions. I have one in the chat and then one in the Q&A. Clara asked, and I know you could speak to this a bit. Um, I know there's some things that you can't say having not been in roofing, only looking at a macro. But she said, if I don't want to sell, how can a smaller or mid-sized company compete against these massive kind of PE-backed operations with huge capital? And that's really interesting to me too. Do you have any insight on that?
I'm not sure that it's much different than competition in general. I think whatever that's what you lean into and you do it well. You service your clients, you stand by your work, and I think the rest takes care of itself. But I wouldn't I as some nefarious or lurking uh, problem down the road. Again, I think injecting capital into the industry and it's bringing best practices along with it. So if you're a firm that chooses to remain independent, it's just going to make you, it's going to force you to be sharper. It's going to make you, tighten your ship to as professional as that private equity firm.
Yeah, I think that competition like breeds more competition, and it's always there. It's a very
Right.
clear way
And
to put it.
that's the market. The market dictates.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it sounds like kind of just continuing to serve your clients, and these private equity firms are going to bring another layer of professionalism to the industry,
Mhm.
which means picking up your phone, guys. That's something I see missed a lot. We talked about that on another call, right? People want to work with people. Um, But yeah, I think that's a really concise way to put it. Is just kind of continuing to operate the way you do and serving your clients in the best way possible. And do you mind if I put a slight input there, Brian?
Yeah, no, no, not at all. I think what you're adding is it's a best practice.
What, picking up the phone?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
No.
having somebody available to the phone, customer service is so critical. It is, many contractors, as I've interviewed and profiled, customer service is probably the single greatest differentiator that they pride themselves in. It's not the it's the solar arrays or the myriad different laminate shingles that are, on the market. It's how do we let our customer know that we are here for them and they can call us and somebody will always be there to pick up the phone.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to Clara, just for your insight, I think that goes back to a previous roofing success series um, call as well. One on operations, and then we also had one on kind of outsourcing. Because if you're the owner of your business, you're not always going to be there, right? You're going to get sick, kids are going to have issues. But if you have systems and processes people can follow to create that brand consistency, that's how you're going to be able to compete, even if you are smaller. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, what were you saying?
Well, I wanted I'm in that
For sure.
because that's a real important that I think sometimes gets overlooked, particularly for small cap firms, that have, EBITDAs between 1 to 5 million. Smaller firms oftentimes are held together by the principal. The principal's the glue. And the best way to ensure that you your company both out, it grows and either gets taken over by the next generation or allows you the exit strategy of your choice is to have systems in place that are not reliant upon you as the principal to be there so things get done. The gentleman I was speaking with yesterday, who successful guy who's rolled up several firms already, he talks the cult of personality, and that's one thing that a lot of these PE firms are going to look for is how well is this operation running without the principal there?
Well, and I think even if you're not selling in order to be able to compete, you need to have that to a level. I don't know. Me as a human being, we're cyclical, right? We're gonna have ups and downs where if we have a team and a system behind it, we can all kind of compensate for one another.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm not. I don't mean to suggest that your company should be on autopilot. You need someone in the wheelhouse. But if you have those systems in place, those best practices in place, where you could step away for for a month needed, and nothing would there would be. I think it's an important point that I think sometimes with smaller firms may get overlooked.
yeah. I mean, I talk to dozens of, not dozens, half of dozens of roofing per day, calendar permitting, and that seems to be a typical issue I see. One guy, they're doing very well right now down in San Antonio because they just had a storm, but he's running around like a chicken with his head chopped off because he's doing every single thing within the
Hmm.
business.
Right.
And so that is not a recipe for kind of success there. He will get burned out. That's a real thing. A lot of people try to say, hey, you can just grind through it. That's what I do, but I know it's not healthy for me. But no, I think that's an in there. Now it's filling the chat with more questions. So we got David asking, hey David, good to see you again, brother. What should you look for, or what should we look for when researching an acquisition? What questions should we ask? David, is that on the buy side or the sell side? You mind clarifying your question a bit there? And while David's clarifying his question there, buying. Okay, so basically
Like,
it's asking, yeah, what were you saying, Brian?
well, I just so David, are you looking to affirm?
I think that's what he said. He just said buying,
Right.
so
What
acquiring
should you be
another roofing
looking for?
company.
Well, I think that you want to look at the last 3 years of financials. You want to see uh, how cash flow is. There's a lot of variables.
Do you mind if I rephrase that question? Because
The-
I think it'll be for David. David, I hope you're cool with that. If not, let me know and we'll re-answer your question. But he's saying kind of like what he should be looking at when he's looking to acquire. You've spoken with a lot of these firms that are doing the acquisitions. What is it that you see those firms doing that's making them successful when they're on the acquisition side? Because I know you've spoken to quite a few guys. If you're at liberty to share that, again, of course.
Sure. I mean, these guys are professionals, and they're bringing in professionals. They're going to scrutinize. You want to make sure that if you live in a market that's heavily dependent on insurance, how like insurance markets, depending on where you are, they're in a lot of trouble. If not for Citizens Insurance, three-quarters of that state would no longer have insurance on their house. So you want to see, what type of clientele is being served, what, the last several years of cash flow looks like, and how that operation is run, the owner. Are those best practices in place? Is it the owner's sister who's answering the phone? Is it the owner's, oldest son who's in the warehouse stocking the vans? At a minimum, you also want to hire professionals to give you a proper valuation. It's not something that I'm aware anyone would do on their own, which is why uh, depending on depending on the size of business that you're looking at, that's why they have, brokers or, investment bankers to come do those valuations.
So when you're saying professionals, brokers, those bankers, also maybe I've heard a bit like accountants, lawyers, checking any skeletons in the closet, doing the due diligence on metrics, like you were saying, financials. One interesting thing you said was kind of with insurance and kind of doing those acquisitions and being in trouble. You'd mentioned Citizens Insurance of Florida. Was
Mhm.
that after the two hurricanes last year, where there was just a ton of claims going through, or
No, I
actually
mean,
very
well, I
interesting?
mean, those didn't help,
Yeah.
but this market has been in trouble for several years. A lot of carriers have since left the state. In fact, I remember watching this after the two back-to-back. I'm blanking on their names because there's been so many, regretfully. And this one couple bought a house somewhere on the Gulf Coast. I want to say Naples or Tampa, one of the, and they a week after they closed, the hurricane came through, and they had no insurance because their roof was older than, I would say, 5 or 6 years. I mean, something, patently absurd, but that's the environment that and depending on which state you're in, there have been several states that either are passing legislation or have legislation on the books that specifically prohibit a roofing contractor from uh, acting as the homeowner's agent, which is why there's, the public adjuster.
Yeah.
Some people say it's a middleman. Others say that it ensures an arm's length transaction. But, if you know how to navigate your way around the insurance markets, it's fairly steady business, but uh, it's also not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, so just to kind of like consolidate the answer to David's question there, one was if you're not familiar with insurance and the company you're acquiring is an insurance-based roofing company, being wary of that, and understanding it's going to be a different process if you're coming from retail. Two is understanding financials, understanding culture. It sounds like two, where people fall into place. Is the owner, like when the owners leave, does the business fall apart? So kind of that culture aspect you were talking about earlier. And then lastly, it was just kind of having professionals actually look at the books before you make the deal to make sure you're making a deal that is fruitful or will potentially
At
be
a minimum.
fruitful because you can't guarantee that. But
At a minimum. Well, and you know, if the is situation's different times, private equity almost insist that as you know as a the owner, at least for some period of time, and ensures both a smooth transition and has skin in the game, which gets and that also gets back to the whole cult of personality thing. If the owner's not there and the business falls apart, I mean, David, you don't want that. PE firms don't want that.
does that answer your question, David? Give him a second to answer. But okay. Okay, we got another question coming. I got one more before you, Adam. Clara had a follow-up question. Clara, where can I learn more about those systems? Brian, do you have any input there? If not, I can kind of direct her where to go because we've done some past trainings on that.
Systems in terms of like best practices.
I think we were talking about, so her first question was if I don't want to sell, how can smaller and mid-sized companies compete against massive PE firms? We talked about kind of having those systems operation in place
Oh,
and operating at a core level. Do you want to touch on that, or I can just point that to other?
I would, you know what, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
No worries. Just wanted to ask. So, Clara, I'm gonna post a link to the group after this. All past kind of recordings are in there. There are quite a few we've done already on systems for just kind of management for sales, management at a higher level, kind of operations, sales, project management, and a few other things. I'm going to drop the link at the end. Just make sure to join there. I'll send you the link to a few of those. If you ask me directly, I'm in there too. I'm more than happy to share it. And then we'll also be doing a presentation next week from a guy. He's built his business, I believe, to $20 million over the course of 4 years, who's going to be talking a bit about those systems too for growing and scaling a business. So, Clara, remind me at the end. Well, I'm going to post it, but my name's George. You can see it there. You'll see my big fat man bun in my profile picture. Just reach out to. I'm happy to point you to those resources. Um, and they're free. Everything within here in the Roofing Success series is free, so please take advantage of them. I've got some more follow-up questions now. Brian, you are by far the speaker so far. Congratulations. I know you were nervous about that in the beginning, but you're kicking butt, man. So had asked, do you see significant differences in the consolidation process between residential and commercial roofing companies? That's interesting. Okay.
Great question.
Yeah.
I th from what I understand, commercial went has already gone through this first of consolidation that residential is taking place now. It's still happening, but not at the pace. You know, I think that yeah, commercial. I'm thinking of in the last years, like I think I know of, I can recall one one platform that commercial focused that's launched. So that consolidation, like from what I understand, that took place that happened about a decade ago.
Okay. So it's a little bit further along.
Yeah, it's more mature.
Okay. And so basically that's more in inning nine as opposed to bottom of the first, or where would you say?
Well,
I
I
gave
don't
your
know.
baseball analogy. It's very
Right.
visual.
Certainly the seventh inning stretch.
Okay. So more towards the end there, there's more mature players in there, and a lot of the consolidation has already occurred.
To the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, but just on what I'm seeing every day, if 10 if I see 10 acquisitions a week, nine of them are residential.
Okay. There's a lot more where the focus is right now for these PE firms.
Correct.
Because they're in that tier A, there's more players at that level as opposed to the larger firms.
Well, also with residential, there's just a lot more residences. than office buildings. In commercial real estate is it's not a great time right now. And that also includes multifamily. Multifamily, like, it's kind of like that weird nether region between. It's not quite commercial, but it's not as.
And that, I guess that kind of relates to what we're speaking about in the beginning when you had mentioned those macroeconomic factors kind of stalling this consolidation of the industry.
Yeah, well, I the drag on commercial, that's, we're in 2025. I mean, it's been about 4 years now, post-pandemic. So what else? What else? How can I be of to find contractors who take the time to listen to me yammer?
Great. We got some more questions here, guys. If you have additional questions, drop them in the chat. I'm not going to get through mine today, Brian. Maybe we'll do a part two. But I did want to talk a bit about kind of bad exits you've seen. I know we've seen some hostile takeovers with the industry. I think that sort of stuff's interesting. But I want to answer Clara's question first. I don't know if you would be a better source for this or maybe a business brokerage, but she's asking if I'm open to a sale, how do I find a PE firm that wants to buy? I don't know if that's something
Um,
you're.
Well, depending on the size of your firm, unlike, wanting to sell a house, there's brokers out there who are well connected within M&A, who can connect you to the right person. And Clara, that's important because you're getting married. I mean, unless you're planning to divest, and in which case your sale price, theoretically would be less because they want a lot of these firms want the owner there. That's part and parcel of, yeah. So like, frankly, you can just go onto a search engine and just, type, uh, you know, I want to sell my roofing business, and it'll populate, no shortage of brokers out there.
And I think I've had a lot of interest over the past few weeks. That may be another speech that or presentation I do is finding good brokers within the industry, Clara. So
But it's for owners to uh, to not only worry about, well, how do I look to PE, but how does PE look to me? Like, what 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 expectations do I have? How will my firm change? What will it be like to now have partners? Because that's what you're doing. You're taking on partners. And if you're used to calling the shots yourself, I don't know. Being married isn't always easy.
yeah. So we have another have to cut it off there because we only have 5 minutes left. And I want to be respectful of your time, Brian. I did have one final question for you, and then I'm going to do kind of final comments for everybody here today. Let me find my final question. There was a super important one I want to ask before we wrap up. In my opinion, important. We may have already covered it too. Yeah, I think we already covered it, right? It's what's going to kind of happen to those independents who don't sell, and we covered that with I think it was Clara's first question, going over like, hey, right, you need to be making sure.
We're still so into it that I don't, at this point, I don't really think it's something that it should keep anyone up at night.
Yeah.
But I know one question that you, in the list of questions that, when you and I were horse trading,
Mhm.
you asked me about books, if there's a book I could recommend.
Yeah.
There's not a book I could recommend to any particular contractor looking to sell. This is really more for the audience, but anyone who's an owner who is planning to make a change with their firm. The author's name is William Bridges, and the title of the book is making the most change. Read my writing. You know, you don't forget when you're selling your firm, you have, however many employees you have who this isn't a change for them. This is a transition. And there's a lot of unknowns. And there's the right way to handle something, and there's the way to handle something where you just scare the crap out of people and you know, John doesn't know who to talk to, and Jane doesn't know, well, is she still going to have an office? It's really, it's been a Bible of M&A world, I don't know, the last several decades. I want to say since the 1950s. And it really, it talks about psychology behind making purposeful changes that are in of your employees. So I think I found really a use of information when I was interviewing someone, so I wanted to pass that along.
That's actually really cool, and I love books that have kind of stood the test of time, you know,
Hmm.
not something that's just like brand new. Hey, let me sell something to you, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like those older books are
I,
very,
I think
oh,
it's on its sixth or seventh, edition at this point.
yeah, and 25 years or 75 years is nothing to scoff at. I typically try to do like a minimum of 20 years old when I'm reading stuff, so I'm actually gonna pick that up myself. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty. Any final notes on your end, Brian, that you want to make?
I guess I want to again just reiterate how nascent, how early this whole process is. And if you feel like, oh, get left behind, I better act now, you won't get left behind because there's always somebody for a new market or pick up a niche or expand their territory. Be mindful who you're partnering with if you're looking to partner, because there's a huge difference between someone who wants to help you scale and make your business better versus buying you because of your cash flow and then just lumping you in together with 10 other strangers and repackaging you and then selling you off to somebody else. And it's a great industry. You've worked hard to build your business, and don't get carried away by either the thought of cash or I don't be the last one on the lifeboat. But you know what? I'm happy to come back in time because the next time I come on, who knows what the who change now and then.
Yeah, maybe we're in the ninth inning. The economy sped up. No, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to hop on today, Brian. We're running a bit short on time. I did have one last question for you that I think is going to be important for the audience, and that is, what's your favorite Grateful Dead song?
Oh,
There we go. That's the question
man,
today, right?
that's I'm gonna say Terrapin Station.
Okay, fair enough. Chat votes on that. No, I'm just kidding. But so we got that. It looks like we've been through most of the questions. We did miss a few. I apologize, guys. Brian, I'm going to chat with you about doing another potential follow-up call because there was a ton of engagement here today, and I want to make sure that people are able to get as much as they can out of you if you're willing to give that.
Yeah, no, you know what? I've I thought this was, and I hope that the provided was helpful.
I am one excited to read that book, and I feel a lot more clear on the effects of private equity on roofing today. Everybody, if you'd be so kind, give Brian a thanks in the chat for taking the time out of his day to do this today. Every speaker on the series does it absolutely free out of the kindness of their heart, and that means a lot to me. So thank you, Brian, for taking the time, sharing that with me. It means a lot. And say thanks in the chat, otherwise you're banned. No, I'm just kidding. But with that being said, guys, just to wrap this up, This is a part of the Roofing Success series. Thank you, of course, Arturo. Just keep dropping those thank yous in the chat, guys. And while we are wrapping up, and everybody, all of these recordings are free for you to view. Go back, go through. There's a bunch of trainings on systems, automations. Brian's training is going to be going in here too, in the Roofing Success Series Facebook group. So I'll drop that in the chat real quick and give everybody a few minutes to grab it. But go ahead, join there. We'd love to see you. If you have any questions, drop them in here, right? I want to see the group be more interactive because I'm trying to get everything I can for free so you guys can grow and scale your business. And then maybe one day when you do need help advertising, we can help you. If not, you can take advantage of any of the other people that I'm going to bring in here too that do the same thing I do. So, with that being said, there's the link. If you guys want to, go ahead and join. But other than that, guys, have a great evening. I look forward to seeing y'all next week for the next part of the Roofing Success series. See y'all.
Thank you, guys.